This is the JWN podcast. I'm your host, Joseph Nienstead. This is a solo show. As of now, I might as well be the president because as I record this, we don't know who the next president's going to be. We think we might know, but there's a vast conspiracy by the evil Democrats to take away the presidency of Donald Trump by injecting all of these votes that came out of nowhere magically and mysteriously, and they're taking away all of my leads. Oh my God. I can't believe this is the world we live in. I cannot believe it. I am so just emotionally and physically exhausted from the last few years of this country. And, you know, I know we were, like, if you pay attention to politics, you were definitely prepared for this. Like, I mean, it was predicted that this would happen. There was a little bit of, like, kind of cockiness maybe on the left. In maybe the day or two leading up to the election, people started getting a little bit more confident. They're like, oh man, these polling numbers look really good. Maybe it'll be a landslide and it'll just happen quickly and we won't have to deal with any kind of drawn out, stressful, litigious, just stress bomb of a situation that we find ourselves in now. Yeah, but that didn't happen. It went pretty much like all of the experts called it. I mean, even Bernie Sanders, you know, was on a late show. Was it Jimmy Fallon or something like that? A couple weeks ago, basically saying exactly what was going to happen. He literally said, you know, you're going to have all the Republicans show up in person day of, you know, their votes will get counted first, and then all of the early votes and the absentee ballots and the mail-in ballots will get added up later because that's just the way a lot of states are set up. That's their laws on how to process the votes. And those votes are going to be more democratic. So you're going to see it look like one thing, and then it's going to change as the days go by, and then the picture is going to be completely different by the time we're to the end of this. You know, when the final count happens, it'll be a different picture than the way it looked. And so we knew this. We were prepared for this. And these kind of things have historically always happened, but just not at this level because of the fact that we're living in a pandemic. These are all things that if you are following what's going on, you know all this. I'm not saying anything new. But holy cow, I don't think I was prepared mentally for what I'd be going through. It's consuming me. The anxiety is real. And someone close to me, I expressed that I was stressed out, and she said to me that, you know, it's not a big deal. Whoever wins, it's not going to affect your life. Your life's not going to change. She's like quoting the Avid brothers to me. Your life doesn't change by the man who's elected. Anyway, I was deeply offended by that sentiment that I'm not affected. I'm like, I got a real taste of what it's like when someone downplays your anxiety. And it really made me think to myself, how many times in my life have I done that to other people? How many times have people said to me, like, they're upset about something, and then I kind of blow it off like, oh, that's not a big deal. You'll get over it. Or, oh, here's a better way to look at that, or how to deal with that. And instead of saying, you know, I see that you're hurt and upset, and, you know, if you want to talk about it, talk about it. I'm not going to diminish or devalue your pain. And in that moment when she did that, I was extremely offended and angry, and I just wanted to, I was so angry, but I wasn't going to do anything about it because the relationship we have is professional and not one where I could say my mind freely as far as like how I was feeling in that moment. But in a way, I quickly came to this conclusion that like, oh, this is what it feels like when someone uh, doesn't value that you're hurting. That when someone doesn't see you for the pain that you're experiencing, um, and yeah, I was kind of horrified that I have most likely have done this to people before, and it is not a good feeling, and it's very upsetting. So yeah, I mean, I was able to turn that around to being grateful that she pissed me off so much by telling me that it's not a big deal. Because besides the fact that it is a big deal, I have children. I'm handing this world to my children, and this world is a fucking dumpster fire. Hate to say it, but it turns out that the man who is elected actually can affect your daily life, especially when you're living through a pandemic. And he doesn't believe the things going on right in front of him. Yeah. So, it doesn't look like we're going to know by the time this episode drops that whether or not the presidential race has been decided. And it makes me think of 2000 when George W. Bush and Al Gore were found themselves in not quite the same type of situation, but a drawn out situation where it came down to Florida and there was a lot of fuckery. And anyone who remembers that time and is going through this now, like there's no confidence that Biden will be able to, all the math and all that stuff looks like Biden will win, right? But after watching tonight, this is Thursday night when I record this, and I watched Donald Trump's statement. When I watched the president come up and just have diarrhea of lies and conspiracy theories and all things that, guess what? Anyone who's followed politics, especially elections, knows how these things work. Whenever a vote comes in for a state, it always looks conservative first, and then it starts to swing towards a more liberal vote count. Like those start building up later because the city centers where the liberal people tend to live take longer to get their votes processed. And when you factor in the absentee ballots and all of that kind of stuff, mail-in voting, which tend to lean more left, when you get to the final stages of a vote count, it always looks like that things start swinging a little bit more left. That is normal. That's always happened. But it's obvious that Donald Trump has never, ever paid attention to a presidential election in his life. And it was evident when he won this election and he was walking around for years talking about his electoral college. He's like, look at this electoral college map. I can't believe how many people, supported me through this thing. And like, he didn't know how the electoral college worked. It was all news to him. Anyway, sorry, you didn't tune into this podcast for politics. So I am greatly apologetic for going that far into it, but it's what's on my mind right now. It's what's on every American's mind that is paying attention to the process. And I have to imagine that given the amount of people that showed up to vote, that it's on most people's mind that are listening to this. Whether or not you are Republican or Democratic, that is not important to me as far as the fact that you are just paying attention. Obviously, I am leaning more to the left of things, and I have to say that the Donald Trump version of the Republican Party has pushed me a lot further into the left. a lot further than I've ever been in my life. And I think I'm a pretty progressive person, but this is so bad that that whole party embraced this, and then to watch how many people voted for him, and you start to question yourself. You're like, well, am I wrong? What's how how so many people like on board with this? It'll be interesting in years from now when we're very removed from all this. If he was just like that one person was the actual symptom of a shift of the mindset of this country, of globally, because it seems like in the last few years there have been a rise in this populist type of leadership. It's not just him, but it'd be interesting years from now to see where it goes and see if we do end up in idiocracy, or if we course correct and realize, hey, we've got to be a little bit more compassionate to each other and stop getting so far on each side and maybe come a little bit more into the center. It seems like Joe Biden's message is that, but I don't know if that's where the country is. I don't know if the country is even ready to act civilized. At least when you're online, it doesn't seem like it. I think in real life, though, people are a lot nicer to each other than it appears when you get online. It's just true. I'm not saying anything outrageous or crazy, but there's people that you love and you respect, maybe in your own family, that when you hear their political views, when it's disembodied and in the form of like a message on Facebook, that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that's the same person. Like, I love that person. Why are they such an asshole? And they probably think the same about you. So yeah, that's what's been on my mind. So I hope that you are doing well. I hope that you are coping with the anxiety much better than I am. I hope you've been sleeping. I hope you've been eating properly. I hope you've been exercising or meditating or doing the things that you do to kind of center yourself. I certainly have been all over the place. I've been erratic, and I've been feeling that way for quite a while now. And I feel like I'm not alone, obviously. We're all going through this pandemic together. We're all going through various different, globally, we're all just going through various different political shifts and just we're feeling the effects. I think in a westernized civilization, any westernized civilization, we're feeling the effects of what social media algorithms have produced. I think when you go back and look at the dystopian futures that were like Terminator, like the movie Terminator, where it was like robots kind of rise up and take over, or the Matrix, something like that. I think this is a lot like what those were depicted, just a lot more sinister because we don't know it. You know what I'm saying? So instead of like a physical robot, like a Terminator, like a T2 or whatever it is, whatever the heck Arnold Schwarzenegger was, instead of it taking a physical form of this thing, a tangible robot that is oppressing you, it's an algorithm. It's happening to us without us even knowing, without us like physically seeing the oppressor. It's kind of, and I don't even know if that was the intent. I still haven't watched the Social Network documentary on Netflix. I feel like I understand what it's about without seeing it, which is stupid. That's just ignorance. But I don't think like when these people were creating this, that they were trying to change how people interact with each other on that level. I think they were just trying to figure out how to make money and get people to stay online, stay on their platform so that they could serve up ads that were relevant and they could make money. I really think that's what their plan was, but what they ended up creating and what they ended up fostering was so much more sinister. And we are living in this weird sci-fi hell. And I wonder if everyone wakes up from it like in the Matrix, when if we take the right color pill to wake up from the online reality and like start living the real reality, the physical, organic reality, is it going to be hard? Uh, one of the major themes of the Matrix is the world that Keanu Reeves, that Neo rejects in that movie, in that story, is an easy world. Like the easiest thing he could have done was to stay inside the Matrix and just live out his life. The harder thing is to like look at the reality of life, and it's hard, it's gross, it's dirty, it smells, it's violent, it's all of that kind of stuff. I don't know if we're that far into it. Real life is beautiful. It smells. You go outside, it's a lot better smelling than being stuck inside a room for months on end. So I don't know where I'm going with that. I think I just went off the rails a little bit. But what I guess I'm trying to say as a whole is that the dystopian future is upon us. And maybe we need to not so much walk away from it, but recognize it for what it is and be compassionate and empathetic to people as they start to get out of it. You know what I'm saying? As they start to realize it. And it's hard. I've always tried to treat anonymous people on the internet like they were actual human beings standing in front of me and give them the benefit of the doubt. It's very easy to read something that's written in text by a non-professional writer, because none of us, I shouldn't say none of us, most of us are not professional writers. We're just people. It's very hard. It's very easy to read something in a negative voice. Like it seems to be the default. When you read a message someone sends you, even a text message, it's easy to read it and attribute a feeling that they weren't trying to convey in the first place. And it feels like sometimes that's the default. Like you'll read something and you'll immediately take it the wrong way. At least maybe I'm just broken enough that that's how I do it. But I try to like look at it from the most positive angle and respond to it as if I'm taking it responsibly, even if I get a negative feeling. Instead of being defensive right away, I try to come back at it and be like, okay, what's the nicest way I can respond to this? Not all the time though. There's sometimes, and the times that I don't do that, I always regret it. Let me ask you a question, person who's listening to this, that I don't know who you are. Have you ever gotten into even the tiniest little bit of a anonymous social media war with someone you didn't know that said something ugly, and that you responded and you went back and forth on it, and then you just kind of gave up or it ended, whatever? You go through the rest of your day replaying that in your head. Even if you say you don't, I think it comes back to you. I think you carry it, even subconsciously, that negative experience. Because it's not healthy to go through life on that defensive and through having that negative experience with people all the time. It's just not, when you're in the real world of dealing with people in person, we generally aren't mean to each other unless you work in customer service and you answer phone calls in customer service. Then it's like one step between online like assholery and real life kindness. Because once now you're talking to somebody, but you can't see them. So you're a lot, and I'm guilty of this. I'm very guilty of this. And I hate when I catch myself doing this. But there's a level of respect that goes away when you're talking to someone on the phone, when you're trying to get something out of them. And I don't think it's the person on the phone's fault. It's always a system that's in place that makes it impossible for them to actually help you. So let's say your cell phone provider, let's say you have Verizon and you need to call them up for something, and you get someone on the phone and you already know going into it that this is not going to go well. You're like, oh, there's a problem with my bill. And you call up customer service and you're like, hi. Oh, okay. You need all my information. Here's my code word. So you'll talk to me. Okay. Here's my problem. And you go into you explain the whole problem, and you go into very detailed, this is exactly what I've done. Here's blah, blah, blah. And then they'll go, okay, let me transfer you to the right department. You're like, but, okay. And then they transfer you. And then that person picks up and they go, what's all your information? What's your password? What's all this? What's your account number? And you're like, but I just gave it to this guy. He didn't, you don't see it? Doesn't come up in your system? No. And then now you're a new level of annoyed, right? I hate having to repeat all this stuff, especially if you have a last name like mine, where when you're on the phone, there's too many letters that sound like other letters. So then you gotta no, it's I-E-N, not M, N. N is in Nancy. Not M is in Mary, N is in S. No, not F, S. Like S like Sam. And just every letter you start doing that. And then you're just like, and then they want to flex their actual military knowledge. So they'll be like, oh, you mean like A is an alpha, right? And I'm like, I don't care, man. Just get the letter right. And by the time you get through giving your name, you're already so many levels annoyed. And then you no longer treat this person like a human being. They're just now a person that's making your life terrible. So, I want to get better at treating people better because it's hard to be empathetic for someone in that situation when you get beaten down. And what's even worse is when you call any kind of customer service now and it's voice activated computers that never do anything right. And then you're just mashing buttons to try to get it to get to an actual person. But I think that's one level of hell before you get to social media, where it's just completely, fully just disrespectful and wrong. And I'm trying to do better with that stuff, because I do feel like those negative interactions with people do carry along throughout your day, throughout your week, your month, whatever. And collectively, I think the world is there's a lot of anger going on, and it doesn't need to be. I think we need to come up with better tools. What do you think is a better tool for getting along? I like the idea of podcasts because I can sit there and flesh out these ideas and these problems, and I can talk about it. And I think if you're listening to this, I'm not coming from a bad place, but you can't have this kind of conversation with a troll who just wants to get a reaction out of you, Anyway, let's get our mind off of the general anxiety. I'm sorry to have taken you down that place, but I really didn't have a choice today. That's where I'm at. But let's get into the news. All right. So for our first story, and I promise you, I'm only going to do a couple of stories this week because, there's a lot of other news going on, and so creative news it's kind of hard to come by the last week or so. But there's stuff going on, like this story coming to us from Gizmodo, or there's many places actually where this story came from. It was pretty widely reported on if you are a fan of music and music streaming. And if you have any friends that are musicians, you might have heard this story. If not, I will tell it to you now. Spotify has come up with this very creative idea. So this is the worst. This is awful. So they're basically trying to tell artists that they will be more generous in their algorithm of pushing new music from, say, your band to their listeners, to their subscribers, if you take less money as a royalty for your stream. So let's say normally you put out a song, and if someone streams it, you get a penny, right? And so every time someone streams that song, you get a penny. Well, they're saying, hey, if we give you a quarter of a penny, we'll make sure more people hear your song. See, back in the day, there was this thing called payola. And it's highly illegal, but radio stations used to basically say, hey, if you pay us money, we'll play your song. And it's highly illegal. And it got shut down. You can't do that anymore. Somehow Spotify has, this is kind of like how all of these multi-level marketing companies, you know what I'm talking about, the ones that sell like leggings and nail polish and fingernail stickers and hair products that make your hair fall out and all those kind of things, how they can pretend that they're not a pyramid scheme because they just shift the business model just enough to not be classified as a pyramid scheme, but they're pyramid schemes. If they're multi-level marketing type of thing, they're pyramid schemes. You know, it looks like a pyramid. It functions like a pyramid. It's a pyramid, but you can't call them a pyramid scheme, or else they'll sue you. But anyway, similarly, Spotify has said, "Oh, this isn't payola. We're just, you know, it's different. It's the same." Artists uploading new tracks to Spotify will be able to choose music that's a priority for them. And in exchange for accepting a promotional recording royalty rate, Spotify's algorithms might just bless them with exposure. The company isn't making promises, it's only offering an opportunity. There's no guarantee of placement in playlists, and the reduced royalty rate is only applied to songs that end up being served through the new recommendation system. What is a promotional recording royalty rate exactly? Spotify hasn't actually responded to anyone's request as to how much that is, but I guarantee it's a fraction of what they're getting now, and they're barely getting anything now. So it's like, here's nothing, and now here's negative something. Like, I don't know. I don't know anyone that makes a decent living off of Spotify. I know a lot of musicians. I don't think any of them count on streaming as a viable income source. You're better off almost going to, say, YouTube and creating your own YouTube channel and then getting the money off of that. Because at least you can get sponsored ads and stuff. But yeah, this is so gross. This is so gross. Pay for play stuff is illegal in radio for a reason, because now, you know, if you have money, you can get a lot of exposure. And if you're an up and coming artist, how do you compete? So, right, you know, in the infancy of digital streaming and the like, you know, I can write and record a song in my own in my bedroom, right? If I'm talented enough, I can put it online and I can become Justin Bieber, because that's what Justin Bieber did. You know, he was recording stuff. I don't know if it was recording music or if he was recording videos, whatever it was. He was a kid putting stuff online, got discovered by like Ellen, who had him on the show. And next thing you know, huge star, right? But that was the equal playing field that you could start from and become successful. The music industry prior to that, like, it took a lot of money to get, because your only avenue for getting discovered was getting on the radio, and getting on the radio was impossible. The only way you could get on the radio was get signed to a major label, who then had people connected with these radio stations that could get your music played on the radio, because they'd be like, oh, you want to have U2 as a guest on your show as like a live interview? Okay, we'll play Johnny and the Fuckheads, this other artist that we have, and we'll make sure that you get access to U2. They did stuff like that. So breaking through the music industry up until the late 90s, early 2000s, well, more of the 2000s, it was an extremely difficult thing to do in a grassroots way. It was just a lot more difficult than once the internet opened the doors for anyone to get their music out there. Then it really introduced a lot of new artists to huge audiences. And we still see that to a degree, but practices like what Spotify's doing can only hurt people. Because sure, any artist can participate in this. Like, you don't have to be rich, a successful artist to do this. But what happens when everyone just does this? Well, guess what? That's now your new royalty rate. Is that reduced royalty rate, that pay for play rate, is now going to be, because if everyone's doing it, if all of the bands that can afford to take the pay cut do it, well, then if you want to get discovered on Spotify through their algorithm, you have to take the pay cut too. So then everyone takes the pay cut, and that just becomes their new rate. This is so awful. This is a terrible, terrible thing. I don't know how, since Spotify isn't even an American company, I don't know how this is going to play out over time. And if they are able to continue doing this, does Apple Music start doing it? Does Amazon or Google or whoever, all the other streaming services, there's hundreds of them out there all over the world. Do they all start following suit if this works for Spotify? I imagine so. So hopefully it gets shot down. I don't know how to get the message out there for people to reject this. Maybe it'll take people like me just canceling their Spotify subscription and saying, the reason why I'm canceling this is because I feel like you're unfair to artists. But if all the other companies do the same thing, then where are you going to go? What's left besides just buying physical music, which, let's face it, I can't bring a record player with me out on a run. All right, let's move along. Kanye West says he's voting for the only candidate he can really trust. Well, he already voted for it as this came out. So Kanye was one of, guess how many people who voted for Kanye West? Guess. Just guess. What, you got a number in your head? You ready? You ready for this number? 60,000 votes in 12 states where he was on the ballot. The total amount of people who voted, it's an estimated 150 million people that cast a vote. And he got 60,000. So luckily, he did not make a dent in the election. Holy cow. I did listen to his interview on the Joe Rogan podcast. I was very much interested to hear him explain himself and just to kind of get that thorough conversation with him. And yeah, he's an interesting person. He's definitely deeply affected by pop culture. That's what I took out of his interview on that podcast. Everything to him was a pop culture reference. Like his whole worldview is like something he saw in a movie or heard in a song. And I kind of get it. Like I appreciated it, but it was it was kind of disturbing to hear. After a while, you're like, oh, wait a second. He truly believes like he's on the pulse of the world because he's connecting what he saw in like a movie once with something he heard in a song once, and that like somehow he's riding that wave of these different things. He's connecting these dots, thinking that like they're all part of this message that he's getting from God. And that's how he speaks to God. I don't know if he said it exactly that way, but that's how I started to piece it together. Like when he says like God told me to do this, it's like, no, he saw that on a TV show And that's how he interpreted it. That's what I kind of took from that, which was an interesting thing because he was brutally honest about that. And maybe a lot of us are affected the same way. We just don't vocalize it that way. So that was kind of interesting. But yeah, he also said that he's going to try to run again and try to actually get on to the ballot in all of the states instead of being, late to the game and not being able to get on the ballot and all, he started too late. It was a crazy thing. Where I live, he came to South Carolina. That's where it all kind of exploded, where he said some really crazy stuff at one of the events, which was literally, I could walk to where that happened. And I didn't go, and I was kicking myself for not going because that was kind of a historical moment when he got up in front of a group of people in the South and started talking shit about Harriet Tubman. Like, what? What is going on here? And I don't think he articulated himself very well. But interestingly enough, of the 12 states that he ran in, the one where he got the most votes was Tennessee. When you think hip hop icon, clothing designer icon, shoe icon, like sneakerheads love Yeezy sneakers, right? Does Tennessee come to mind? I'm so shocked. Minnesota was the second most amount of votes. Minnesota gave him 7,789 votes. They also, in Minnesota, elected Jesse the Body Ventura as a governor once. So that's not surprising. But Tennessee? That's just, 10,216 votes in Tennessee. That's kind of nuts. Like, I don't understand anything anymore. Maybe I need to watch the movies that Kanye's watching so I can put the dots together and find out why Tennessee loves Kanye so much compared to, say, everywhere else. I don't know. It would be interesting to see him run on the ballot nationwide. It would be interesting. I did not want him to do it this year. I think it's too important. And you know what? It's probably going to be important for the rest of my life. So you know what, Kanye, don't, please. I know you're listening. I know you love listening to this random podcast from some guy in Charleston, South Carolina. So please focus on your church thing. That sounds like a real uplifting thing that you're working on. Put your energy in there. And you seem to be hitting lots of home runs with your sneakers. Maybe don't get into politics. Maybe just leave that one alone. It's not for the creative types. I think people who are creative, people who work in creative fields, might be a little too. I don't want to say fragile, but we're definitely a little bit emotional or on a different frequency than you would need to be the leader of a country. You know what I'm saying? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm completely missing the boat here, but I think you should put your energy into creative stuff, not into politics. I think I'm gonna put an end to the show right now here. It's a good stopping point. And I do hope you listen to Monday's episode. I have an awesome podcast guest. Her name is Kaylin. She is a journalist. She works for a newspaper here in Charleston. She is like the entertainment writer, and she is just a really cool person. And we had an awesome conversation. And she ended up like starting the whole thing talking to me, like interviewing me. So the first like 10, 15, I don't know how long we went, it's her asking me questions. And I'm like, wait a second, who's interviewing you here? So that's how that went. But it's still an awesome conversation with her after that. And I hope you enjoy that. and I hope you have a great weekend. I hope that you're not feeling too much anxiety, and that if you are feeling anxiety, that's okay. I hope you find a way to cope with it and to take care of yourself. All right? Don't forget, follow the show at jwnpod.com. On Instagram, it's at JoeLatex, JOEL, the number 8X. And subscribe, leave a review, do all those kinds of cool things. Share it with your friends. I'd love to keep doing this, and the more it grows, the more fun it is, and the more guests I get. And yeah, it's just a cool experience that I'm having, putting this out for you, and I hope you're enjoying it. All right, take care. Peace!